Welcome to our video on installing a rear derailleur. Now there's two parts to this process. The first is installing the derailleur hanger into this recess on the back right dropout of your trike. The second portion is actually installing the derailleur. To install the derailleur hanger, you'll need the hanger plus its nut and bolt mechanism that hold it to the frame. In this case, we're going to use a Park Tools TW-5 ratcheting torque wrench to make sure we tighten the nut and bolt to the correct specs. If you don't have one, you could certainly just use a 5mm Allen wrench, but you would be less accurate. No matter what type of torque wrench you own or use, it's very important when you're not using it to dial it back to zero. What happens is inside of a torque wrench, if you don't dial it back to zero, the springs inside that give the torque wrench the correct tension either get expanded or compressed and eventually will not give accurate readings. The TW-5 comes with a step-up adapter because the TW-5 is a 1/4 inch drive, and we need a 3/8 inch drive to use our 5mm socket wrench to tighten everything up correctly. It's nice that Park Tools provides a little step-up adapter though. You're also going to need a 5mm Allen wrench. Also, you're going to need a Park Tools chain ring nut wrench. It's the CNW-2. This particular unit, if you see it on the back here, it actually has pins on the back. And those actually go into the slots on the back of the nut and bolt system that allow it to be tightened up correctly. It's almost impossible to get a large screwdriver into this nut to actually hold it to allow it to do that. I like using Loctite to hold this nut and bolt system together. Some people use grease. I prefer Loctite. Now in the old days, Loctite used to come in a bottle, and as you used it, it would drool down your arm. Those days are gone. Welcome to the new Quick Stick by Loctite. This is a blue Loctite that is like a glue stick. It is amazing stuff. It works equally as well as the standard blue stuff that's in a bottle, but doesn't have any mess and is way more controllable. To install the derailleur hanger, you start off by taking a Q-tip that's been cut in half, or at least this is what I do. I put some Loctite on the Q-tip. Then on the bolt portion of the nut and bolt system, I carefully put on the Loctite onto all the threads until it's completely covered. Next, I take the nut portion, which is the part that has the little slot in the back, and place it into the back of the dropout. Now, while keeping my finger on the back of that nut, I place the hanger over top and I put in the bolt so it is hand tight. Once you've done this, what you're actually going to see is there's a little bit of play in the hanger. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the CNW-2 and the long prong end, or the part that sticks out in the center being the longest, that's the side I find that works best on the back side of this nut. So I place that in, I find the groove, and then I start the process of tightening up just a little bit more. Now there's something to think of here. It's very important. Notice how you can see a little bit of white in the dropout on the side there. If you actually tighten it up while it's in this position, it'll be very hard to get the skewer and axle assembly up into there. It'll get stuck or hung up. You have to actually take this whole hanger and push it up to the top before you snug up the unit to maximum tension. So at this point, it's now all the way up and I'm just snugging it up. Next, I'm going to use my Park Tools torque wrench to torque the nut and bolt assembly to the correct tension. The correct tension is between 8 and 10 Newton meters, but I've set mine halfway to 9. When the Park Tools hits that tension, it goes click, and you actually see and feel a physical change in the torque wrench, and that's perfectly torqued to the correct standards. Because we've pushed the hanger all the way to the top, we should have no problem getting the axle and the skewer by the dropout. Now at this point, I could check the dropout alignment by using a dropout gauge and alignment tool. However, if we have a problem at a later time, we'll put the gauge on and check it all over. Because we used a torque wrench to do this, we've got the greatest strength of the unit itself and guaranteed there's no damage to any parts. Now on to installing the rear derailleur. What you're going to need to install the rear derailleur are these items here. You're going to need a 5mm Allen wrench or Allen key. You're going to need the derailleur itself. In this case, it's a SRAM X7 rear derailleur. It's the mountain bike version. You're going to need some Park Tools anti-seize. This is an ASC-1. It's used in the bolts to make sure that they don't seize up and we can get them out at a later date. I'm going to use my Park Tools TW-5 small ratcheting torque wrench. And the torque spec set out by SRAM is between 8 and 10 Newton meters for the tightening of the bolt. So I've set my torque wrench halfway between at 9. I always split the difference whenever they give you a range. Also, over and above the Allen key, you're going to need the step-up adapter. As well as the step-up adapter, you're also going to need the 5mm hex socket wrench to attach to the adapter. Now on to the rear derailleur assembly itself. I start out by taking a Q-tip and cleaning the threads on the inside of the derailleur hanger to make sure that there's no residue on the inside from the original machining. It could be paint, it could be metal shavings. You certainly don't want them in there. Also, I clean the bolt portion that goes into it on the derailleur itself. Next, I apply some anti-seize onto a half a Q-tip, and I put that anti-seize into the threads on the derailleur hanger itself. I don't apply any anti-seize to the bolt on the derailleur, since the anti-seize, if it was on the bolt here, could seep into the mechanism of the derailleur itself, which I don't want to have happen. As I put the bolt in now, all the excess anti-seize just goes out the back and it's easy to clean. As you notice, there's a little V-notch that bumps up against a screw. This V-notch has to be in this position as you're putting this on to allow the derailleur to be adjusted up and down. Also on the back here, there is a little tab. That little tab actually has to sit on top of the notch on the back of the hanger right there. It's very important that it's there. If it's not, you will be unable to change the angle of the derailleur in the adjustment portion in another video. So it's very important that you make sure that that tab is sitting on top of the back of the hanger. As you can see in this picture right here, that little tab sits right on top of that little notch on the back of the hanger, and this screw mechanism is what allows us to adjust the angle of the derailleur at a later time. All this is very important, and you have to make sure that it's done this way. If not, you will get no adjustability whatsoever. At this point, I just snug it up hand tight. Now I take my Park Tools torque wrench, set to 9 Newton meters, and once again, when the wrench goes off, it'll go click right in that spot right there. Not quite, there you are. Once it's up to 9 Newton meters, the torque is correct, and that's the end of the process. Just double check to make sure that the unit can still move back and forth smoothly, and you're all done. When you tighten all your parts on your trike using a torque wrench, you tighten them to the correct standards, meaning that the part is not going to be damaged by over-tightening or loosen up and fall off or be damaged from wear because it's moving on the trike. I believe by using a torque wrench, you decrease the chance of failure and you increase the performance and longevity of your trike. I hope this video makes sense, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching.